Some injuries mounting as the 49ers get ready for the preseason opener against the Green Bay Packers Friday. A couple of roster moves as well. An undrafted free agent has been waived in Leon O'Neal Jr. And Kyle Shanahan gives some clues about the usage of Trey Lance and the starters in the preseason schedule. All that and more coming up on today's Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker at BD Peacock at Eric_Crocker. Thanks for making us your first listen here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And Croc, I mean, there's not any big injuries. So I think that's the good news of this, is that everyone looks like they're going to be ready to go for the regular season, but we might not see some of the camp stars in the preseason games with the latest injuries for Charvarius Ward and Emmanuel Moseley. Let's start there with those two guys before we get into the Leon O'Neal Jr. cut. The newest 49er, Ken Crawley, signed. But Charvarius Ward's got a muscle strain. Emmanuel Moseley's got a hamstring strain. We knew Moseley was hurt because he hadn't been practicing for the last couple of days. But those look like they're minor, but I'd be shocked now if I see him in the preseason, right? They got a month to get ready. Let's get these guys healthy and ready to go because they've proven that they're already ready to go. And maybe they need to not be at practice so Trey Lance's completion numbers can go up.
Hey, they were making life very difficult on Trey Lance, that's for sure, making them throw tight window passes all the time. But yeah, keep those guys off the field. Just let them rehab, get that growing right. You know, between growing and hamstrings and those soft tissue injuries, those are things that can easily be, aggravated. And when you are those guys who they are depending on you to play and play well, give them all the time that they need. I'd be surprised if you see them in the preseason game. I dealt with a growing injury during training camp, and I don't have the luxury of being like, oh man, I got a growing injury, just I need to sit out. Like, nah, man, you sit out, we'll cut your ass.
I mean, that's an interesting one because that goes right into the Leon O'Neal stuff because he had a groin. And as reported Wednesday, Leon O'Neal has been waived injured by the 49ers. They brought in cornerback Ken Crawley because they were light on cornerbacks. So clearly they needed to add a player to one position group, and it's easiest to cut the guy who's now can't practice if he's got a little bit of an injury going. But, a groin injury is pretty minor as well, as long as it wasn't something severe. And I don't think it was for Leon O'Neal. So maybe there was more to it, and they saw a guy that wasn't going to make the roster anyway, and they weren't worried about making that move now to waive Leon O'Neal, although some fans are really excited about Leon O'Neal potentially making the roster as an undrafted free agent. And to make matters worse for O'Neal, I think they gave Ken Crawley his number 14 on day number 1, the same day he gets released.
Yeah, they don't waste any time. Like once you're released, like that number is a hot commodity, and the next person that they sign will likely have it. Especially now where defensive backs, receivers, the numbers are kind of a little bit more universal now. So, they're going to put somebody in that uniform as quickly as possible. And I was asked questions by some people that know him, and they were, just asking hey, man, what's the depth chart look like at the safety position? Croc, I know you're tight with the 49ers and you look into all that. I was like, man, he's going to have to really stand out on special teams. And if he can't do that, it's going to be really hard for him to make the roster. And I'm not sure what his special teams usage is right now, and a lot of times you'll have an idea if you're going to make it based on where they have you lining up on special teams. Are you with the first group? Are you with the second group? If you are, then they might prioritize you as someone that they really want to keep around. If not, they'll let you go quick, fast, and in a hurry. And real quick, sometimes, and this might be the case with O'Neal as well, and this was what happened to me also. Maybe I don't want to say they liked you, but maybe, you weren't doing anything too much to move the needle and some other players got injured. And once that happens, they need to bring in players to fill that roster spot so they can go into the game with enough depth. And that's what happened to me. 2 running backs were hurt. It was Chris Ivory, Joe McKnight, and also offensive lineman, Brian Winters. And it's like, oh, well, we need to release some people so we can bring in guys to play those positions for the game coming up. And it's like, oh, Eric Crocker cut his ass. So it's just business. That's probably what happened to Leon O'Neal.
Yeah, that's rough. Yeah, and if you can't play in the preseason game, it makes it really easy because, like, man, we've already got our safeties figured out. You're not going to make the roster anyway, and you're hurt and can't play in this preseason game. We need bodies. So, sorry, you got to go. That sounds like a numbers crunch there for Leon O'Neal Jr. We hardly knew him.
Real quick, a lot of fans, you talked about him kind of being a fan favorite. Like, he was. Fans, they were really high on the thought of him. And not to be like disrespectful or anything like that. I don't know why. I think he went undrafted for a reason. He was someone who I was excited to see just because, this is a guy who had a lot of experience playing in the SEC. I knew he didn't test well. I wanted to see, could he overcome that and be more of an athlete on the field? But, yeah, 49er fans won't be able to see that.
It's the same way with Donovan West. And I think it's just because pre-draft rankings had some guys, as mid-round players. And then when they slide all the way to the end of the draft and they're undrafted free agents, you get excited. You're like, oh, man, maybe the 49ers got a fourth-round guy, a third-round guy maybe as an undrafted free agent. And you find out sometimes that's not the case. Sometimes it actually is the case. But it looks like right now that, that's not the case for Leon O'Neal, but he's got a chance to maybe hook on with another team. Maybe he could get signed back to the practice squad later. It's not a big-time injury, so who knows? Maybe when some other things change, we see Ken Crawley get released, and who knows? They have an opportunity to bring Leon O'Neal Jr. back. Some other absences from 49ers training camp practice. It looks like a rest day. Hopefully it's just a rest day for Elijah Mitchell. Sometimes it looks like a rest day, and you find out later that it's a hamstring injury like the Emmanuel Moseley injury. Dre Greenlaw had a blue non-contact jersey on, and no insight into what the exact injury there is for Dre Greenlaw, or if it was just a rest day. Hopefully it was for Elijah Mitchell. But in Elijah Mitchell's absence, according to reports, that maybe Trey Sermon had his best day of training camp this year. So that running back 2, 3, 4 spot, I mean, that's going to be a fun one. And those guys are going to play throughout the entire preseason game. We're going to see a lot of Sermon. We're going to see a lot of Ty Davis Price. We're going to see a ton of Jordan Mason probably as well, and JaMychal Hasty. So I think one of the most fun things to watch, because they're going to be on the field in these preseason games, is that offensive line, the backup offensive line, and I think the running back depth chart, right?
Yeah, and I was going to ask you, how do you see this whole thing playing out? Because if you look at their usage during training camp, right now, it looks like there's some roles kind of developing. And the guy that I feel like most people would say is the odd man out in JaMychal Hasty, he's kind of been that pass-catching third down back for them in certain scenarios. There was a 2-minute drill when we were there, and obviously we talked about it. It ended with a touchdown. It was an awesome drive by the 49ers and led by Trey Lance. But it was JaMychal Hasty in that scenario working with the ones. So I don't know. Again, I talked about the special teams aspect of things for undrafted guys. You look at scenarios like that where it's like, hey, there might be just this is the role for Hasty. So who doesn't have a role? That's what I'd be looking at, like something that's very specific where they continue to bring this guy in, and that might be the person that's the odd man out.
Yeah, and the team loves Jeff Wilson. Jeff Wilson plays special teams, so he's not going to get cut. Jeff Wilson, I saw him on Sunday. He was rocking out when they were doing the special teams drills. Creedence Clearwater Revival was playing. He was doing air guitar. He was like psyched. And, he's one of the up backs there in front of the return man on the kickoff return. So he plays special teams, backup running back. He runs hard. The team loves him. He's good in pass protection. He can catch the ball a little bit. So I don't see Jeff Wilson getting cut. If anything, maybe there's some sort of I think it's kind of like Ty Davis Price versus Trey Sermon at this point. And Ty Davis Price has to beat out Trey Sermon. Then maybe Trey Sermon is potentially an odd man out, gets traded at the end of training camp or something to another team that needs a running back. Maybe it's something like that could be in the works. But you're right. JaMychal Hasty's different than the other guys because he's got a little bit more of the jitterbug, pass catching sort of a specialty role. But I think a lot of the other guys can catch the ball enough, and Kyle doesn't really target his running backs that much. So is there enough of that role for Hasty to make the team just on that? So that'll be a big question. And just
think about
the
like
order
this.
that they use him in.
Well, NFC Championship game, he had access to all of his running backs. When Jimmy Garoppolo threw his last pass as a 49er, who was he throwing the ball to? JaMychal Hasty. And that's in the NFC Championship game. So, again, look at their roles, and that might kind of tell you what this team is thinking. Now, he might very well be released. But I'm just trying to look at it through the lens of Kyle Shanahan and what he's trying to do. And so far, it seems like someone that wants to have JaMychal Hasty on the roster. Somebody's going to have to really take it from him.
And it really seems like Jordan Mason is kind of the future Jeff Wilson, too. He runs hard. He doesn't wow you height, weight, speed, but he's kind of got a little bit of everything. I think Jordan Mason probably does have to go to the practice squad just because of the numbers, but he looks like a player that could potentially stick. And who knows, maybe a team steals him off of waivers if the 49ers cut him. So they've got some serious depth right now with everyone being healthy, knock on wood, at running back for the 49ers. And that's going to be a fun position to watch here in the preseason games.
And I say that about JaMychal Hasty and his role and everything, then next thing you know, he's cut tomorrow. That's just hard luck, right? Anytime we mention a player, like the opposite happens, like the very next day.
It happened with Juwan Jennings, where we said, man, he's been absent and doing nothing in camp. He has his best day at camp. It happened with Danny Gray. We got.
And it's crazy too because outside of that, then we don't hear from them again.
And then it's just the next practice, and then that was it, just to shut us up. So that's really funny. Yeah, I can't wait for Friday to see this. And there's going to be one 49er that everyone's going to be watching Friday that will be playing according to Kyle Shanahan. That is quarterback Trey Lance. Kyle talked about his preseason plan for Trey Lance and the 49ers starters. We'll get into that and another competition brewing as well at nickel cornerback. But first, Croc, we got to let the folks out there know about Built Bar, the newest flavors of Built Bar, cookie dough chunk puffs. I'm a big fan of the peanut butter. They got the peanut butter lovers bundle right now with the peanut butter and the peanut butter brownie flavors. You can buy them together. And Pina Colada, the latest from Built.com. I can't wait to find out what this Pina Colada bar tastes like. They better send me some of those. I'm going to just buy myself a box of peanut butters, though, right now because I'm getting excited just thinking about it. Tons of flavors, the classic flavors, the puff bars at Built.com. You can feel good about the snacks that you eat when it is a high protein, low calorie snack with low sugar, like Built Puffs, like the Pina Colada Built Puffs. We're talking 150 calories, 17 grams of protein. It's a protein bar that tastes like a candy bar. And I don't know how Built does it, but somehow they're able to do it. The cookie dough chunk puffs have a light and chewy texture, real cookie dough chunks. And of course, they're covered in 100% chocolate. That really drives it home. Really feel like you're eating something as decadent as possible because of the real chocolate, not some fake chocolate either. This is legit real chocolate covering most Built bars. Again, high protein, low sugar, low calorie. That's the combination you're looking for. Get rid of all those terrible for you snacks and all your secret hiding places in the pantry, at your desk, at work, in the glove box of your car. Replace it with Built bars and thank me later. Go to Built.com and you can get 15% off your order with our promo code. That is promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off your Built bars at Built.com. Promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. They don't have any more birthday cake puff bars, though. Croc's got
man. I got the last batch.
Yeah.
I sell them $10 a pop.
Yeah. I had to drop
did you see me get up during your ad read?
Oh, no. I was in the zone. I didn't see that.
If y'all are watching on YouTube, you might see, like, for the first 10 minutes of this show, my eyes wandering all over the place.
I did see that. That's why I was laughing after the intro. I was like, what is Croc doing right now?
I'm not on anything. Dude, this fly was buzzing around and it was loud as hell. Just buzzing around. And I said, enough is enough. Once you got to the ad read, I seeked it out. I killed it. So no more flies. So now I'm focused on y'all now.
You can't escape Croc's coverage.
Yeah, that fly couldn't. It's dead.
I like it. All right. How about this from Wednesday's training camp practice, the last tune-up before preseason game number 1 and a much needed day off Thursday before the Packers come to town. Rookie 5th round cornerback Samuel Womack III was running with the ones, as far as I know, for the first time in training camp at nickel corner. He was with the top group, according to Nick Wagner of ESPN. Darqueze Dennard was running with the 2s, and Womack had a near interception late in practice versus Trey Lance. This is something that I was wondering if it would happen, and an odd time to finally do it right before the first preseason game. I wonder if Womack has overtaken Dennard for that, or if this is just like a straight-up battle now, and they're going to go back and forth like Brunskill and Brendel have at center. But Sam Womack, the rookie, getting some run at nickel, and that's where we project him to play, right? It seems like a perfect fit to play there. And actually, we talked about it. He was one of the first guys out on Saturday when we were there. He looks bigger than I thought. He's 5'9", 185, right? Is that what he's listed as?
Whatever he's listed at, he definitely looks bigger than that. He doesn't look as short.
Arms. Yeah,
he doesn't look as short as 5'9", and he definitely looks thicker than 185 or whatever, right? He looked closer to 200 pounds. So we got to find
him as a nickel, right? That's like a perfect fit for him as a nickel corner. So there's a veteran, Denard, that the 49ers clearly like enough that he's been the guy, for the entire offseason.
One thing with that nickel position, a lot of people, or not even just nickel, but just in general, right? People are like, long arms, you want long arms to coverage and, press and knock the ball away, whatever. But really, where you have the best advantage with your hands or with your arm length is when defeating blocks. So if you are a guy like Womack who's going to be playing in nickel, when you want to go and defeat a guy that's trying to block you and you want to extend those arms so that he can't get into your body, the longer your arms, the better it is so that he can't get in here on you. And then you try to peek to see where the running back is and then disengage. Having those longer arms really helps. Almost like in the offensive lineman, right? Like, why do people want offensive linemen or defensive linemen with really long arms? It really helps guys not be able to get into your body. So that's one advantage for a guy like Womack, who isn't as tall, even though he doesn't look short in person, but has really long arms. That'll definitely help him.
Yeah, help that size play up. With offensive linemen, think about that. If you're an offensive lineman and there's a pass rusher trying to get around you, and you can get to them before they can get to you, you can really control them. And it's huge for defensive backs. And just making that window a little bit smaller when you're trying to bat a ball away. So I was impressed by what I saw from Womack. Didn't supremely stand out, but he looks solid, and I'm excited to see that as well.
He had a nice play in it. Was it in the end zone on Juwan Jennings today?
I did not see that.
So he had a pass breakup on Trey Lance, and the ball was intended for Juwan Jennings. And one thing about Juwan Jennings, he's not a big separation guy. And we watched him during one-on-ones, and he had to win a very specific way. It had to be with power at the top of his routes. And if he didn't get that, there was just zero separation, and you have to bank on him bodying a defensive back. And with a guy like Womack, you would expect him to be able to do that, but Womack has really long arms. So that's one thing just to kind of keep note of, especially when, you hear a report like that where, Womack almost picks off a ball. It's like, well, if Trey Lance is looking for Juwan Jennings, it's hit and miss with the separation. Maybe you have to put it in more of a specific spot so he can really use his frame.
Yeah, and you would expect Womack on Jennings, Womack should be able to stick with him because of his athleticism.
Right.
But that's a great sign for Womack because that's the biggest, strongest receiver on the 49ers roster if he's able to battle him for the ball at the catch point too. So,
right.
Yeah, very good sign there. I like that.
I like that battle real quick. I didn't touch on it too much, but a guy you drafted, you want him to continue to improve during OTAs, during training camp, to the point where it's like he might be ready now to start to get some reps with the ones. And that's a great sign for a team that has drafted and developed mid-round guys at a really high rate. They've gotten a lot of production out of those guys. So if he can be the next guy in there, we say him. There's Burford. Him too. This might just be a draft class where a lot of these guys end up playing early, and that's exciting. If you're those guys for the opportunity, which 49ers have always said, like, if guys are ready, they're going to be in there. And we didn't think that too many guys would have legit starting opportunities, but Womack was one of those where we were like, okay, there might be a chance. And I have Tracy Sandler on. I spoke with her. She said that she expected Womack to win the starting job in the slot, and that was a couple weeks ago. So maybe she's on to something.
Yeah, she is on to something because he's getting work with the ones. So the competition, at the very least, is on between Sam Womack and Darqueze Dennard to be that number one nickel for the 49ers. We'll see how that shakes out Friday against the Green Bay Packers. That'll be Jordan Love playing quarterback for the Packers, but it will be Trey Lance playing quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers. Croc, next, let's get into Shanahan's comments about Lance and start looking ahead a little bit to this preseason game because Trey is going to be out there with the ones against the Packers Friday night. I do want to thank everybody once again for making Locked On 49ers your first listen. For your second listen, make sure you're checking out the Peacock and Williamson NFL show daily here, talking about the entire league. Croc doing the Locked On NFL Draft podcast daily, and make Locked On Fantasy Football one of your listens. Find the intellectual fantasy expert that is Vinny Iyer, bringing you over 20 years of NFL expertise and unique angle to give you the moves no one else has for your fantasy football leagues. Get ready for your fantasy drafts with Locked On Fantasy Football, also daily and also right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Okay, Croc, according to Kyle Shanahan, Wednesday, the 49ers starters are going to play in week 1, or at least Trey Lance, and I think most of the starters is what he was talking about, will be playing in games 1 and 3. So they're going to skip that middle game because of the close proximity of the 3 preseason games. There's 3 games in, I think, 12 days, right? And
I don't think that's the only reason why. I think they're getting legit reps in that competition battle with Minnesota Vikings. They have the joint practice.
And those joint practices, I think, are what Kyle Shanahan's really excited for, and they get pretty physical. So I think that second preseason game is going to be the throwaway game, or not necessarily throwaway, but it's going to be the game where, you know, you see a lot of the backups, a lot of the third teamers, the guys fighting for the bottom of the roster, get some extra reps and play in that game. You're going to see the starters a little bit in week 1, and then you're going to see maybe a lot of starters in week 3, kind of like the classic week 3 preseason games have always been, the final tune-up for the season. And that looks like how things are going to play out. Here's the quote from Kyle. He said, quote, "I'd like to get guys to play in this game because I don't want them to play in the second game, hopefully a little more and a little in 3. So that is the plan, including Trey Lance out there Friday night against the Green Bay Packers. So that's going to make that one all the better to watch. And really, as far as week 2 goes, it's those joint practices is the one. That's the ticket you want, more so than the second preseason game. Are you going out there? Did I hear you say you might be going over to Minnesota for that one?
I'm trying to work it out with my wife right now. I'm trying to figure that part out. You know, I got my daughter here. She's still not in school yet. So I'm trying to see if at least I can just catch those 2 practices and then come back to Arkansas. So, you know, because that's, again, if you're not going to see these guys in the game, you just want to see how they compete against guys. And you know, what I was really looking forward to going, you know, if I was going to go, but seeing Charvarius Ward and Emmanuel Moseley against Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen, that would have been something to see, but we won't see it.
Yeah, that would be great in those. Ward is only supposed to be a couple of weeks, according to the reports, with that muscle strain.
But I wouldn't play him in that because these dudes are going to go all out. Like that competition, the way that everybody's juice is going to be flowing, they're going all out. And I don't want to put a guy in harm's way that is recovering from a soft tissue injury and potentially have a setback just because we want to see him compete in practice.
And you want to be there for that scrap too. You know, they're going to do some kind of fight being thrown down, but it's also a great opportunity for the other corners to go up against Justin Jefferson. Because I fully expect the reports from that be like Justin Jefferson's whipping up on dudes. If Moseley and Verrett and Charvarius Ward out there, but if that's not the case, then that means some of the other guys have a chance to show up and play against one of the best wide receivers in the league. So that's a great test. I love that week of practice. What do you expect, Croc, to see? Real quick before we talk about Trey Lance in that preseason game, another note here with Charvarius Ward and Emmanuel Moseley both out of practice. It was Darqueze Dennard and Ambry Thomas earlier in the week. Today it was Kadar Holman getting the shot on the other side across from Ambry Thomas, working with the ones. I was surprised to hear earlier in camp Kadar Holman got a day with the ones when Moseley was out, and I was surprised by that because Kadar Holman wasn't somebody I was circling to make the roster for the 49ers. I was watching him a little bit. He didn't impress me a ton. What have you seen from Kadar Holman? Do you think he's got a shot to actually make the roster? Because it seems like he's fully in the mix to be wide receiver 4, if not, cornerback 4, if not cornerback 3 for the 49ers on the outside.
This is a guy who I'm not going to lie. I didn't even pay any attention to being on the roster. And then you go out there and you watch him like, who's the number 24 guy? Right? And it's Holman. And there were a couple of veteran plays that he made. This is a veteran. You know, he played with Green Bay. You know, he's been out there. He's had some experience really playing out there. And I'm pretty sure he's looking at it like, dude, you know. One thing about these guys, after you get past like legit starters, there is not much separation between your CB3, typically, your CB3 unless it ends up being like Jason Verrett and he's 100%, he's just good to go. But aside from like any type of like random scenario like that, your CB3 and your practice squad cornerback, most of the time there is not a lot of separation. So you go out there and you watch Holman, and there is a chance, or there's a big chance or opportunity that he is just a little bit better than Ambry Thomas and a little bit better than Deommodore Lenoir. And when I mean better, just maybe a little bit more consistent. Maybe not as good of an athlete, but he just does things where they're like, man, we like this. And he knows how to address the game from a mental standpoint. And yeah, you talked about him potentially being that CB4. I could see it. And we haven't even talked about Dante Johnson.
I didn't even see Dante Johnson out there at practice. The 2 days I was there.
Yeah, he was there.
I didn't really see him much at all, or even where he was lining up. That's really strange. It's so funny how I always forget about Dante Johnson until he shows up, and sometimes he shows up right when you need him too. So there's still some. It's actually, now that I think about it, with Demo and Ambry Thomas and Kadar Holman and Dante Johnson, and obviously Womack and the other rookie from this year, Tariq Castro-Fields, who was out there at practice. Even with Ward and Moseley out, it's not like they're hurting for corners. It seems odd that because they only have 4 safeties, right? Or I guess they have 5 because they have Taylor Hawkins, right?
Yeah, Hawkins, yeah.
Up there as a 5th safety, but it didn't really, I guess they just wanted to make sure, but it didn't really seem like they were hurting necessarily corners because they had so many guys to begin with anyway.
And you also got to remember, you always got to throw in Dante Johnson because he plays multiple positions.
Yeah, he's safety and a corner and a nickel.
Yeah.
Soon get some reps on offense. Who knows?
Right. He's big athlete. 6'2", 205 pounds. Like he's a big athlete.
Yeah, he's big. I'm sure he played some receiver at some point.
Yeah, definitely.
But couldn't catch. Like young Croc when he got moved to defense. Let's go. So Trey Lance is going to play week 1 preseason. What do you want to see from him? Like, he probably won't play that long, but what do you want to see from that first unit led by Trey Lance? Are you trying to see him take some shots against the defense? Do you want to see him dump the ball off? Like, what are you going to be looking for with Trey Lance Friday night?
You probably won't remember this game, but a few years back, the San Francisco 49ers played against the Houston Texans in the preseason. And I remember this was like Deshaun Watson, maybe his 2nd year. And he just came out and he really worked the quick game. They were in shotgun, they kind of spread it out, and it was like easy reads for him. It was spread out, and he made quick, and he was quick and decisive with his throws. And he was on the money, didn't have to be like this super accurate guy because it was just right there. 5-yard stick route, boom. 6-yard slant, boom. And he was hitting those. And I would like to see that from Trey Lance. The downfield shots, those things are going to come. But right now, I just want to see him get in the rhythm. And I just would like to see the offense not look like clunky, right? To where it's just like a little skittish, a little all over the place. And, oh, man, okay, well, he just has to settle down. Like, I don't have to say that when we come back and talk about him on maybe a surprise episode on Saturday. Or, we talk about it heading into Monday's podcast episode. But I don't want to say, oh, he needs to settle down. I want to be like, hey, man, like, okay, took what they gave him, was quick, decisive, got the ball in his hands, completed a few passes, even if it results in a punt, get him out, and that's it.
Yeah, look comfortable. You don't want it to be like a labored process of him getting through reads and finding the right guy and looking like he wants to escape the pocket too soon, feeling pressure when it's not there. Those types of things is probably what I'll be looking at most. And, you don't want to see him just airmailing balls either. You want to see some bit of accuracy, setting the feet and hitting his targets. So look like an NFL quarterback, right? I think that's what you're hoping he's going to be this year for the 49ers, a starting NFL quarterback. And the
playmaking aspect will come. I don't need to see that yet.
Right.
I just want to see, can you be quick and decisive, get the ball at your hands on some of these short throws? We talked about a higher completion percentage throwing the ball short, but in this game, I don't really care about that. I just want to see that element of his game, and then heading into, if we don't see him against the Vikings, see him that last game, and just see, okay, now can you progress to maybe hitting some more deeper routes and breaking routes, things like that, where you have to be more accurate.
And it's funny because his best, maybe not his best practices, but the best I saw him, and it was the same at practice Wednesday, according to reports, but the 2 days I saw him, the best Trey Lance looked is when they had the move the ball periods, the thing that mimicked football the most, where he's able to run around, make some plays. That's when he looked the best in those practices, and they moved the ball down and they scored a touchdown. And so I think that will absolutely come with Trey Lance. You don't want to get him hurt, so you better not be running the ball, right? And if he does, he better scoot right out of bounds. But the competitor comes at you in those games too, so that's probably why you don't want to be on the field much. But yeah, you want to see him. You want to see him look not lost. You want to see him hitting some targets, maybe take some easy stuff. And I think that's where Kyle Shanahan, because when Kyle Shanahan talked about Trey at practice, that the frustrating part about his interception was not that he was trying to make a play down the field and just missed it, or the DB made a good play. It was that he threw it straight to somebody who was covered and should have checked it down. So those types of things, don't make that. Because Jimmy Garoppolo gets a ton, and this is where I push back a little bit on the Jimmy Garoppolo stuff, because everyone's like, the robber got him, or Jimmy Garoppolo threw that underneath interception to the linebacker. Every single quarterback on the 49ers roster, and none of them were Jimmy Garoppolo, made that same interception the same day of practice on Sunday. And we've heard it happen with multiple times with Trey Lance at training camp this year. Like, that's a Kyle Shanahan interception too, as much as it is a Jimmy Garoppolo interception. Sometimes I'm not putting it all on either guy, but I'm just saying, like, when you're trying to force the ball into tight spaces over the middle of the field, you got to know that where those linebackers are. And sometimes you can't make that throw. And sometimes you got to squeeze it into a tight space. So that's
the tough thing with this 21 personnel heavy team.
Yeah.
And I've always wondered too, and I know everybody says, oh man, like, it's Kyle Shanahan. He elevates the play of Jimmy Garoppolo and et cetera. I'm like, man, I wonder what it would look like with Jimmy Garoppolo in more of a spread offense where he doesn't have to be so perfect with timing, rhythm, and catching. Now, that might limit some run after catch opportunities, but it might limit the interceptions, because you don't have to throw to certain specific spots with timing while somebody's dropping, and then, maybe you just missed that guy. And right now, it seems like nobody, including Jimmy or anyone in the past or whatever, they are not missing Fred Warner. They're hitting him right in the chest. How many interceptions in practice has Fred Warner gotten since he's been with the 49ers? I feel like that number's pretty high.
A ton, yeah.
He was picking off some in preseason last year against Jimmy Garoppolo, like in the red zone and stuff like that.
Yeah, a ton. That's what he does, man. Yeah. He's a stud.
He got. I remember when he got Jared Goff. That was a big pick. Picked it off, ran it back for a touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
Got Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson, typically not a high interception type guy. Was it Lamar? No, Cam Newton.
That was probably the number one highlight of Fred Warner's career.
No, it was Cam Newton. He did break up a pass on covering Hollywood Brown.
Oh, that wasn't a pick though. That was still probably the highlight of his career when he broke that pass up. That was crazy.
But picking off Cam Newton, it was almost like Cam Newton didn't really see him. I don't know. It's weird. Nobody sees him, and he's hella big for a linebacker.
Yeah, he's got big hair. Easy to find. He's always talking.
Right. How do you miss him?
Hear him?
He's literally 6'4", and like 230 pounds.
Yeah. All right. Good stuff. Thanks everybody for making Locked On 49ers your first listen. Pumped to see Trey Lance in preseason week number 1 Friday. Croc and I will have it all broken down for you right here. Locked On 49ers.